At exactly 0614 hours on March 22, 2026, the last commercial tanker transiting the Strait of Hormuz, a 330-meter VLCC registered in Panama under the name Olympia Pioneer, was forced to reverse course by 3 Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps fast attack craft. Each craft was armed with C-704 anti-ship missiles. The IRGC radio operator issued a single, chilling transmission on Channel 16. The strait is closed. Turn back or be destroyed. 23 minutes later, President Donald Trump posted a message that was read in every war room, trading floor, and naval operations center on the planet. Iran has 48 hours to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, or we will hit and obliterate their power plants. This is not a warning, this is a promise. The clock had started. The world was about to witness the most kinetic 48 hours in 21st century naval history, and Iran had absolutely no idea what was already in the water beneath them. This was not a spontaneous act of desperation. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the 33-kilometer-wide choke point through which 20% of the world's entire oil supply flows every single day, was the final card in a carefully prepositioned Iranian strategic deck. After 23 days of absorbing over 1,400 killed and 1,434 U.S.-Israeli strike events across the length of Iran, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, the IRGCN, had activated its Mosaic Doctrine, a decentralized, multi-layered denial strategy that transformed the entire Persian Gulf into a contested kill zone. In the days preceding the closure, IRGCN fast attack craft had laid a dense field of bottom-influence naval mines across the northern approaches to the strait. American P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft operating from Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar had detected anomalous surface vessel activity consistent with mine-laying operations, but the sheer volume of commercial traffic and the complexity of Iran's deception, using civilian Dow traffic as concealment, had delayed a full tactical picture by nearly 18 critical hours. By the time the USS Bataan Amphibious Ready Group, positioned 140 nautical miles south-southeast of the strait entrance, received a fully updated mine threat overlay on its /SQQ 32 mine warfare sonar systems, the northern channel was already effectively blocked. Iran had not just closed a waterway, it had lit a fuse attached to the global economy. At the same time, the consequences detonated across world markets with the speed of a hypersonic missile. Brent crude exploded past $114 a barrel within the first 6 hours of the closure announcement. Goldman Sachs issued an emergency analyst note warning of prices persisting above $110 through 2027 if the closure held for more than 72 hours. The Panama Canal, the world's only remaining open alternative for LNG tankers, was immediately swamped, operating at maximum capacity with 38 vessels in transit. But here is the raw arithmetic that made every Western defense minister go pale. 17 million barrels of crude pass through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. There's no pipeline, no bypass, no alternative route that can absorb that volume. Japan, South Korea, and the European Union began emergency drawdowns of strategic petroleum reserves simultaneously. The IMF issued a statement warning of a global recession if the closure extended past 2 weeks. And Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, elected by the Assembly of Experts just 14 days after his father Ali Khamenei was killed in the initial U.S.-Israeli strikes on February 28, issued his first major military address, vowing to open new battlefronts and threatening what he described as crushing blows against the port city of Ras Al Khaimah in the UAE. The trap had been set with stunning geopolitical precision, but Iran's war planners had made one catastrophic miscalculation. They did not know about Operation Trident Resolve. Weeks before the Hormuz closure, U.S. Central Command had activated a Black Flag contingency plan, the seizure and temporary military occupation of Karg Island, Iran's so-called oil jugular and the origin point for 90% of its crude exports. Located just 25 kilometers off the coast of Bushehr province and covering approximately 37 square kilometers, Karg Island is home to the Imam Khomeini Oil Terminal, the largest single offshore crude loading facility in the world. Sever Karg, and you do not just hurt Iran economically. You remove the primary financial engine sustaining its ability to fund the ongoing war of attrition. The island had been under continuous ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Coverage from a combination of RQ-4B Global Hawk UAVs operating at 60,000 feet, and critically, 2 Virginia-class nuclear attack submarines operating in acoustic silence beneath the island's approach lanes. The USS Vermont and USS New Hampshire had mapped every patrol vessel, every radar installation, every surface-to-air missile battery on Karg in unprecedented granular detail over the preceding 3 weeks. The tactical picture was complete. The trigger was the Hormuz closure. The response was already in motion. At 2,247 hours on March 22nd, less than 16 hours after Trump's ultimatum, the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, freshly repositioned from its Pacific AOR to the Gulf of Oman, received its execute order. The 31st MEU embarked aboard the USS America, LHA-6, and her escort vessels, had spent the past 72 hours conducting what appeared to be routine amphibious rehearsal exercises south of the Strait of Hormuz. To the IRGCN surveillance drones operating overhead, it looked like a training evolution. It was not. Simultaneously, 2,200 additional Marines from the 13th MEU began final staging aboard their assault ships at Jebel Ali in the UAE. In the air, 2 flights of 4F divided by a -18E divided by F Super Hornets from Carrier Air Wing 17, operating off the USS Gerald R. Ford CVN-78, were already feet wet over the northern Gulf. There and /APG 79 SA radars, painting every IRGCN surface vessel within 200 nautical miles. The EA-18G Growlers, the most feared electronic warfare aircraft in the world, were airborne and already beginning their systematic suppression of Iranian radar frequencies. The S-band emissions from Iran's Rod air defense system began experiencing catastrophic interference. Iranian radar operators along the Bushehr coast were suddenly looking at screens full of digital white noise. They were blind. Here is what the Iranians did not understand about the kill chain that had been built around them. Every IRGCN patrol boat, every mine-laying craft, every shore-based HY-2 Silkworm anti-ship missile battery on the Karg Island perimeter had been assigned a specific targeting solution, updated in real time by Link 16 data flowing from the Hawkeye 2D early warning aircraft orbiting at 25,000 feet 80 miles south of the island. The moment any Iranian battery went active, the moment any fire control radar lit up, the solution was already on a Tomahawk Block V in a VLS cell on the USS Donald Cook, DDG-75. The Tomahawk Block V carries a maritime strike variant that can update its target mid-flight, distinguishing between a patrol craft and a civilian vessel through dense Gulf clutter using its advanced seeker package. Each Iranian radar emission was not just detected. It was being used to build a comprehensive electronic order of battle that would be annihilated the second an execute order was issued. At 0312 hours on March 23rd, with 36 hours remaining on Trump's ultimatum, the first kinetic action of Trident Resolve commenced. It did not start with a massive, thundering airstrike. It started with a silence that was more terrifying than any explosion. The USS Vermont, operating at a depth of 400 feet beneath the main approach lane to Karg Island, released a UUM-44 Subrock, repackaged as a Mark 54 lightweight torpedo, that silently tracked and locked onto the IRGCN fast missile craft Pekin, which had just activated its fire control radar in a direct targeting posture toward the approaching Marine assault group. The explosion was catastrophic and instantaneous. The Pekin simply ceased to exist. Simultaneously, 2 Tomahawk Block V missiles launched from the USS Donald Cook destroyed the primary coastal surveillance radar installation on Karg's northern tip before its operators could transmit a single warning. The island's eyes were gone in 11 seconds. In those same 11 seconds, 4F/A-18ES executing a SEAD, suppression of enemy air defenses, strike package fired AGM-80 ARGMER anti-radiation missiles at the frequencies of Iran's SA-15 Tor M1 air defense systems protecting the oil terminal. All 4 batteries were destroyed. The air above Karg Island was now completely owned by the United States Navy. What happened next was a display of combined arms precision that Iran's war planners, even after 23 days of U.S.-Israeli strikes across the Iranian mainland, had not believed the U.S. would dare execute. At 0347 hours, 6 MV, 22B Osprey tilt rotors from the 31st MEU, flying nap of the Earth at 200 feet above the dark Gulf waters to defeat any surviving short-range air defense, delivered a 60-man Marine Raider element from the 1st Marine Raider Battalion directly onto the Imam Khomeini terminal's primary loading platform. The Raiders had rehearsed this seizure on an identical-scale mock-up of the terminal for 6 weeks. They knew every corridor, every control room, every choke point. Within 4 minutes of touchdown, the terminal's central SCADA control system, the industrial control infrastructure managing the flow of crude through Karg's 14 Sea Island berths, was secured. The Marines did not destroy it. They controlled it. At 0412 hours, the commander of U.S. Naval Forces Central Command transmitted a direct encrypted message to the IRGCN headquarters in Bandar Abbas on a frequency that Iran thought was secure, but had been compromised by NSA 3 months earlier. Karg Island is under U.S. military control. All loading operations will resume under U.S. authority within 24 hours. Any attempt to strike the island will result in the complete destruction of Iran's energy infrastructure. You have 2 hours to acknowledge. The IRGCN command center went silent for 41 minutes. What occurred in those 41 minutes in the Bandar Abbas Operations Center is not yet fully known. What is known is this: Bahrain's air defenses, which had already destroyed 143 Iranian missiles and 242 drones since February 28, detected the launch signature of 38 drones over Iran's eastern Gulf coast. Saudi Arabia's integrated air defense, operating the Patriot PAC-3 MSE system, simultaneously tracked a concentrated barrage of 47 drones over its eastern province. Both salvos were defeated. Not a single projectile reached its target. The IRGCN fast attack craft still operating in the Strait attempted a coordinated swarm attack on the USS America using 14 vessels in a Wolfpack formation, firing C-704 missiles at close range. The USS America's 2 Mk-15 Phalanx CIWS systems, operating in fully automatic engagement mode, destroyed 11 incoming missiles in 4.2 seconds. The 3 remaining boats were taken out by precision Hellfire strikes from MH-60 or Seahawk helicopters that had been holding in low hover 12 nautical miles away waiting. The Strait was clear of active IRGCN surface combatants for the first time in 36 hours. At 0553 hours on March 23, the first commercial tanker, operating under U.S. Navy escort, transited the northern shipping lane. The Strait of Hormuz was open, but here is where the story becomes truly dangerous, because this is not over. Not by a long shot. The seizure of Karg Island solves the immediate problem of energy flow. It does not solve the strategic reality that Iran, operating under its Mosaic Doctrine, has dispersed its military capabilities across the country in ways that make a clean, decisive victory essentially impossible. Iran's new supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei has publicly vowed to open new battlefronts. Ukraine's President Zelensky has presented what he describes as irrefutable evidence that Russia is providing Iran with targeting intelligence to improve the accuracy of its missile strikes against Israel and U.S. bases. Russia is simultaneously moving to establish 4 long-range attack drone ground control stations in Belarus, a clear signal that Moscow is preparing to leverage Iran's war to accelerate its own operations in the east. The Houthis in Yemen are rebuilding their launch capacity along the Red Sea coast at Hodeidah, waiting for a single nod from Tehran to re-enter the conflict. And in Washington, Trump's own advisors are split, some pushing for a decisive strike on Iran's power grid to force a political collapse, others warning that a regime implosion in Tehran could produce a power vacuum more dangerous than the IRGC itself. The 48-hour ultimatum has technically been met. The Strait of Hormuz is open. Karg Island is under U.S. control, but the cost of this 4-week campaign is already staggering. Over 1,400 Iranians killed, including 204 children. 6 U.S. service members killed in action. 3 U.S. jets mistakenly shot down by Kuwaiti air defenses in a fratricide incident that CENTCOM is still investigating. Oil at $114 a barrel, with Goldman Sachs warning of sustained $110 plus pricing through 2027. The global shipping network reconfigured almost overnight, with the Panama Canal running at absolute maximum capacity. Britain allowing U.S. bombers to operate from its bases, including Diego Garcia, and a new Iranian supreme leader, just 43 years old, with everything to prove and no institutional restraint from a father who at least understood where the red lines were. This is not a crisis in resolution. This is a crisis in transition, from one phase of destruction to another, far more unpredictable one. The question is no longer whether the Strait of Hormuz can be forced open. The question is whether the United States has the strategic patience, the political will, and the international support to manage what comes next. A degraded but undefeated Iran, a watching and calculating Russia, a Houthi movement quietly rearming, and a global economy that is one bad escalation decision away from a full-blown recession. The masters of the sea have demonstrated, once again, that they can dominate any battle space they choose to enter. The harder problem, the one no Tomahawk missile can solve, is what you do the morning after. The clock on Trump's ultimatum has expired, but the clock on the consequences has just begun. What do you believe the U.S. should do next? Hold Karg Island, strike the Iranian power grid, or seek a negotiated exit? Drop your answer in the comments, because the next 72 hours may determine whether this war ends in a political deal or explodes into the most consequential conflict since World War II. Stay sharp, stay informed, and never mistake a temporary tactical victory for a strategic solution, because in the Strait of Hormuz, the world has just learned that opening a door and walking through it are two very different things.